Hey there, night travelers. Welcome back to Night Story HQ, where the shadows whisper and the forgotten corners of the world come alive after dark. If you've been with us for a while, you know we're no strangers to chilling legends and haunted truths. But tonight's story is something else entirely. It's not just eerie, it's unnerving. It's the kind of tale that settles in your bones and lingers long after the last word is spoken. Imagine a place so still, so saturated with sorrow, that even time seems reluctant to move forward. A place abandoned, not because it outlived its use, but because something inside demanded to be left behind. That's where we're going tonight. A crumbling hospital, a forgotten sanctuary of the sick, and the 5 urban explorers who decided to uncover its secrets. But here's the twist. This story won't be told from just one voice. No, it'll unfold like a puzzle, through memories, regrets, footage, and haunted retellings. And by the end, you might start to wonder whether some places should stay untouched, unspoken, and sealed forever. Let's begin. The building had no name anymore. The signs had long since rusted away, and whatever logo once crowned the entry arch had been chipped to dust by decades of wind and rain. But among urban explorers, it was known by a nickname passed quietly from thread to thread: Ward 9. No one remembered why it was called that. There was no record of a 9th ward in the hospital's original blueprints, but the stories were consistent. People went in to document the decay, and came out changed, or didn't come out at all. Our story starts with 5 explorers, not ghost hunters, not thrill seekers, just a tight-knit group of friends who'd made a habit of capturing the forgotten. Rusted schools, sunken farmhouses, bunkers half-eaten by vines, and finally this place. Their names were Maddie, a videographer with an eye for the unsettling; Trevor, the de facto leader with a thirst for legends; Cassie, who brought the gear and the logic; Jordan, whose jokes covered up a jittery heart; and Miles. Well, Miles was the one who found Ward 9 in the first place. It was a foggy morning in October when they arrived. The forest road to the hospital had become a narrow path of crushed gravel and weeds. The GPS gave up halfway through. Trees loomed on either side, branches arcing like skeletal fingers over the car roof. "I think this is it," Miles said, staring through the windshield. "It should be just up that slope." Trevor leaned forward. "You sure? Doesn't look like a hospital." Cassie unfolded an old survey map from the glove box, brushing crumbs off its surface. "According to this, it's about a quarter-mile up, hidden by the ridge. The original foundation was from the 1890s, built as a sanatorium." Maddie was already setting up her handheld camera. "Let's get this on tape." They packed up, locking the car behind them, and started the slow climb. There was something about the silence that made the air feel thicker. No bird calls, no insects, just the crunch of their boots and the occasional clink of camera gear. And then, the hospital revealed itself. It emerged like a carcass from behind the hill. The facade was grimy and pale, streaked with soot and mold. Rows of shattered windows stared out, like blank, hollow eyes. Vines crawled up its sides, wrapping the structure like veins over skin. "Jesus," Jordan muttered. "It looks dead." Maddie whispered, "Or sleeping." Trevor approached the front steps. The doors had been barricaded at some point, wooden planks nailed haphazardly across the entry. But time and weather had done their work. One heavy shove, and the left side creaked open. Inside, the air was stale. Dust motes floated like lazy spirits in the flashlight beams. The tiled floor was cracked and speckled with moss, and faded linoleum curled at the edges like old skin. "Stick together," Cassie said. "This place might not be structurally sound." Trevor led the way into the first hallway, the sound of his boots echoing down the corridor. Maddie filmed as they passed rusted wheelchairs, overturned gurneys, and faded patient records, scattered like leaves. Then the first odd thing happened. Jordan stopped beside an old nurse's station, eyeing a broken analog clock on the wall. "Guys," he said slowly, "this clock, it's still ticking." They turned. It was true. Despite everything, the second hand was moving. Not smoothly, more like twitching, a faint, spasmodic tick-tick-tick. "There's no power in this place," Cassie said. "It doesn't make sense." They chalked it up to a stuck mechanism, just a quirk of decay. But that moment was the start. Maddie kept recording, narrating their progress. October 11th. First contact with interior. No signs of squatters or recent visitors. But something feels wrong. At 3:11 p.m., according to the footage, they found the elevator. It was in a side hall, half sunk into the floor. The metal doors had warped, but one was slightly ajar, revealing the dark shaft beyond. "Looks like it collapsed in on itself," Trevor said, shining his light down the hole. "Stairs it is." The staircase groaned under their weight as they descended. Dust rose like breath with every step. Somewhere below, a door slammed. "Wind," Miles said quickly. "It's probably just wind." They reached the basement level. Everything here felt colder. Condensation clung to the walls, and there was a smell now, sharp and sour, like old antiseptic and mildew. The records room was down here, still labeled in peeling paint. Inside, rows of file cabinets leaned at odd angles. Some drawers were wrenched open, spilling yellowed papers. Maddie picked up one sheet and read aloud. "Patient number 92-847. Female, age 17. Admitted for severe disassociation, auditory hallucinations, and sleep paralysis. Treatment included isolation, sensory deprivation, and trepanation." "What the hell?" Jordan stepped closer. They drilled into her skull. Trevor's face had gone pale. That wasn't standard medical treatment, not even for back then. Miles knelt beside a drawer labeled Ward 9. The Roman numeral caught his eye. He opened it. Inside were pages typed in crisp font, untouched by mold, newer than the others. "Guys," he said slowly, "these look recent." Cassie walked over and squinted. "Those are patient notes, but they're dated 2004. This place shut down in the 80s. Suddenly, Maddie's camera flickered. The screen warped for a split second, colors distorting before snapping back. "Battery glitch," she muttered. But she didn't believe it. They left the room and made their way to the old operating theater. And that's when things truly began to spiral. The room still held the steel operating table, rusted at the hinges. Overhead, the surgical lights hung like frozen spider legs. One wall was mirrored, but the glass had fractured into a spider web of cracks. As Maddie panned her camera across the room, they all froze. A shadow had moved, not behind them, in the reflection. Trevor turned, scanning the corners. Nothing. But then Maddie gasped. "Rewind it. Look." They huddled around the viewfinder. There it was, a shape, human-sized, standing motionless behind them in the mirror. No one had been there. The footage ended with static. Cassie backed toward the door. "We should go now." But the door wouldn't open. Trevor tried the handle. "It's jammed." Wasn't before. Miles kicked it. Nothing. Then, the lights above them flickered. A hum filled the air, low, rhythmic, like an old generator groaning back to life. And in the broken mirror, the shape moved closer. Maddie's breathing was shaky. Her grip on the camera tightened. The lens still pointed toward the fractured mirror. "It's It's moving. In the reflection. But not here. Number no, 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 no. Jordan stammered. That's not right. That's not supposed to happen. Cassie was already tugging at the door with both hands. This can't be real. It has to be a trick. Maybe some visual feedback or mirror warping. Maybe someone's screwing with us. Trevor's voice had lost its usual steady tone. Did you see it? It got closer. That wasn't a trick. That thing was watching us. Then the lights cut out. Complete blackness swallowed the room. Not just dark, thick dark, like ink. You couldn't see your hand in front of your face. Then came the whispering, dozens of them, male and female, soft and indistinct at first. The sound of conversations echoing in another room. But it grew louder, more insistent, more frantic, like arguing, screaming, weeping. And just as suddenly the lights flickered back on. The mirror was empty again, but the door was now open. No one spoke. They moved fast, out of the surgical room, down the hall, up the stairs. The building felt different now. The walls closer, the air heavier, the temperature dropping with every floor. They stopped in the lobby to regroup. Miles collapsed on a dusty bench, his face pale and wet with sweat. We saw something? We all saw it. Trevor nodded slowly. We triggered something when we opened those files. Cassie looked at Maddie. You still filming? Maddie glanced at her screen. It's still rolling, but the battery's draining like crazy. I had a full charge. It's almost dead. That's when Miles did something strange. He stood up and turned toward the West Wing hallway, the one no one had gone down yet. It's calling me, he whispered. What? Cassie asked, stepping toward him. He didn't respond. He just walked. Trevor tried to grab his shoulder, but Miles shrugged him off, eyes wide and unblinking. There's something I have to see. I need to see it. Miles, stop, Maddie began. But it was too late. He was already at the double doors, and they opened for him. Not with force, not with sound. They simply parted, like they were expecting him. And beyond them, darkness. He stepped inside. The others hesitated for a second, then followed. Maddie's footage from the West Wing is the most disturbing. Shaky, low-res, distorted. But it captured everything. The hallway was longer than it should have been. The walls seemed to stretch and warp. Doors lined both sides, but the numbers didn't make sense. 301, then 302, then 917, then Ward 9. That was the door he stopped at. Miles reached out, trembling, and pushed it open. The room was pristine. Fluorescent lights buzzed softly above. The walls were smooth, clean, white tile, and in the center, an operating table with leather straps. Next to it stood a figure. It wore an old surgeon's gown, masked, motionless, and behind it a glass window into another room. Inside that room, more figures, standing still, watching. Children, adults, all silent, all pale. Trevor stepped beside Miles. Do you see this? The figure in the gown looked up. Its mask was wrong. The fabric was stitched shut. No eyes, no mouth. Just seams, as if it had been sewn directly onto skin. Then it began walking toward them. Trevor grabbed Miles and shouted, "Run!" Maddie's camera spun wildly as they fled back into the hall. The sound of doors slamming behind them, one after the other, like dominoes falling. Lights exploded above. Screams followed them, not just their own, but something else. Cassie led them into a room and slammed the door shut. She braced it with an old gurney. Inside, it was pitch black again. Trevor lit a flare. Its red glow filled the room, casting dancing shadows on the cracked walls. "We can't stay here," Jordan whispered, tears in his eyes. "We need to find the stairs. Get out." Maddie sat in the corner, clutching her camera to her chest. "It's more than haunted. It's alive. It knows us." Miles spoke, voice distant. "I saw her." "Who?" Cassie asked. "My sister." Everyone froze. "She died in this hospital," Miles whispered. "Before it closed. I never told you all. I was 7, she was 11. She had seizures. They admitted her here for tests. They said she didn't wake up." Trevor's eyes narrowed. "You brought us here because of that?" Miles nodded slowly. "I needed to know. I needed to see her again." No one said a word. Then, something knocked on the other side of the door. 3 slow knocks, then silence. Trevor stood up, flare raised. "We move. Now." They found the staircase again, but this time it looked wrong. Rusted, warped. It spiraled downward, deeper than the building's blueprints should allow. "There was no sub-basement," Cassie said. "This doesn't make sense." But they had no other choice. As they descended, each of them began seeing things. Jordan saw his childhood dog, brutally injured, limping behind a door. Cassie heard her mother's voice, whispering her name. Maddie saw herself in a mirror, but older. Eyes hollow, smiling back. Trevor heard the voice of a patient begging him to stay. And Miles saw his sister again, not as a child, as something else. Pale, hollow, her face frozen in the moment of her death. "You shouldn't have come," she said. Then the stairs ended. The sub-basement was unlike anything above. No mold, no dust, just steel walls, clean. Literature, like it had never been abandoned. Cassie whispered, "This isn't decay." This was preserved, sealed. They followed the hallway to a massive vault door. Trevor stepped forward, running his hand across the metal. "This is a containment door. Military grade." Jordan found the access panel, rusted and dead. But beside it, a fingerprint scanner. It blinked green. The door clicked open. No one touched it. It just opened. Inside was darkness again. They stepped in, and the door closed behind them. The door slammed shut behind them with a mechanical thud, sealing them inside. For a moment, there was nothing. Only darkness so complete, it felt like it had weight. Then, one by one, low ceiling lights flickered on, buzzing softly overhead. They were standing in a hallway made of concrete and metal. This part of the hospital didn't resemble a medical facility at all. It felt industrial, governmental, cold. And the walls were lined with observation windows. Behind the glass, shadowy figures stood motionless in rows, men, women, and children. They weren't moving. They weren't blinking. But they were watching. Cassie backed away, whispering, "This isn't a hospital. It's a lab." Trevor walked up to one of the windows and peered inside. Inside was a gurney, shackles, an IV line filled with something black, not red. Notes pinned to the wall behind the glass. Read, "Subject number 1, 23, auditory, sensitization. Result, complete dissolution." He stepped back. This was experimentation. "On people," Maddie said quietly. "They weren't patients. They were prisoners." Jordan turned toward Miles. "Your sister. She didn't die in a normal hospital ward, did she?" Miles was crying now, his voice barely audible. "They said she had a rare condition, said she was being transferred for treatment, but she never came back." Trevor walked ahead. "We have to find a way out of here. This wasn't supposed to be uncovered. We're trespassing in something far bigger than just hauntings." As they moved forward, the lights behind them began turning off, one by one. And ahead, a room glowed faintly blue. They stepped inside. A circular chamber filled with old monitors, medical restraints, oxygen tanks, and cabinets lined with sealed jars. Some jars had preserved organs. Others held things they couldn't identify. Maddie raised her camera, filming everything with trembling hands. Suddenly, the monitors sparked to life. Screens showing video feeds from across the building. The surgical room, the basement, the hallways, even the lobby. And in each feed, shadows moved, not theirs. Other things. Watching, waiting. The camera feed labeled Ward 9. Live began to stutter. Then it displayed a patient, a girl, strapped to a table, eyes open, mouth sewn shut. Her face was Miles' sister. The screen flickered, and then she turned her head and looked directly into the camera. Miles screamed and fell back, knocking over a tray. And that's when the room came alive. Drawers flew open, cabinets slammed shut. The lights burst with a high-pitched whine. Maddie's camera caught a figure crawling across the ceiling, limbs backward, head twitching. Trevor grabbed her arm. "We move now." They ran again, back into the hallway. But it didn't lead the same way anymore. The structure of the place had changed. Stairs led downward, where none existed before. Cassie froze. "We're not in the same building anymore. We're in something else now. This place is folding in on itself," Jordan muttered. "It's like it's trying to keep us here." Then the alarms began. A low siren, faint and distorted. An overhead speaker crackled. "Code Black. Subject breach. Ward 9 has been compromised. Evacuate level sub-03. It repeated, over and over, in a robotic female voice. Trevor turned to the others. "We go up. Get back to the original stairwell. We have to get out of the core." But as they moved, Maddie staggered. Her vision blurred, and she was suddenly somewhere else. Flashback. A hospital corridor clean and active. Nurses in the 1980s. Scrubs moved past her without seeing her. She looked down. Her hands were younger. She was wearing a patient gown. She was someone else. Through a glass door, doctors argued. One gestured toward her file. "She's not responding to standard sedation." Then use the auditory loop. "We need to know if the conditioning sticks after extended exposure." Maddie turned, catching her reflection in the window. It wasn't her face. It was the face of patient 92-847. The girl from the file. She screamed. The world shattered like glass. And she was back in the corridor with the others, trembling and gasping. Trevor held her shoulders. "Maddie, what happened?" she whispered. I was her. One of them. I became her. I saw what they did." Cassie looked around. Whatever this place did, it's still echoing. It doesn't just haunt. It pulls you in. They made it back to the stairwell. But the steps had changed. Instead of cement, they were now flesh-colored, pulsing faintly. "Nope," Jordan whispered. "Nope, nope, nope." But there was nowhere else to go. Trevor stepped on the first stair. It held his weight. "Don't look down. Just climb." They ascended slowly. The walls pulsed with each of their footsteps. The light grew dimmer. And then, from below, a low voice began to rise. A croaking chant, guttural and distorted. Something was coming up the stairs behind them. Jordan turned and screamed, "Move!" They burst through the door at the top, back into the third-floor hallway. Only, it was no longer daylight. The windows showed nothing but static, like old television snow. And the hallway was filled with whispers. Shadows lined the walls. They'd sprinted toward the exit sign, only to find it led into a children's ward. The cribs were overturned. Drawings were stapled to the walls, crude stick figures in red crayon. Over and over the words, "We never left." Miles dropped to his knees. They kept them here. The children. They never let them go. A small handprint appeared on the window, then another, then dozens. The door slammed shut. Cassie turned and screamed as the room filled with cold. And in the corner, something rose. A girl in a hospital gown, staring, floating inches above the floor, eyes black. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Maddie stepped forward. "It's her. It's the girl from my vision." The spirit raised her hand and pointed at Miles, then vanished. Trevor yanked the door open and pulled them through. "This place doesn't want us. It wants him." Miles didn't fight it anymore. "I need to go back," he said. "I have to see her." "No, you don't," Cassie snapped. "You don't owe them anything." "I owe her," he said quietly. "She died alone down here, because our parents believed the lie, and I left her." He turned and ran. They chased him, but the building shifted again. Corridors bent, doors sealed. They were separated. Maddie, alone, found herself in the original operating room. The mirror was whole again, and in it, her reflection stared back, but did not move. It blinked out of sync, then smiled. Maddie stood frozen in front of the Auris mirror, breathing fast. Her reflection smiled again, but her own mouth didn't move. Something behind the glass was pretending to be her. Then her reflection lifted a hand and dragged its own fingernail down its face, peeling the skin back slowly. There was nothing underneath, just darkness. Maddie screamed and stumbled backward as the mirror shattered on its own, glass flying out, not in. From the shards on the ground, a whisper echoed, "You let us in." Somewhere nearby, doors slammed. Lights exploded. The hospital was waking up. But it wasn't a building anymore. It was alive. Cassie was running blind through another hallway, using her phone light. Everything around her pulsed, groaned, whispered. Her mind raced. She was always the logical one, the planner, the one who could calculate her way out of anything. But not this. She ducked into a room marked Archive 7. Inside were rows of tapes, VHS, hundreds of them, labeled by hand with strange identifiers, Subject 89F, Episode 4, Visual Replay. She slid one into the player mounted into the wall. The screen crackled. A room appeared, white, sterile. A child sat on a bed, legs dangling. A doctor's voice from off-screen asked, "Do you still see them when you close your eyes?" The child nodded. "What do they say to you?" The child paused, then whispered, "They tell me things. About the fire. About the stairs that never stop." "What do they tell you about us?" The child looked at the camera. "That you're not real anymore." The screen went black. Cassie staggered backward. On the far wall, something was being scratched into the drywall by invisible hands. The words appeared letter by letter. "She's behind you." She turned. The girl in the gown, black eyes, floating. This time she spoke. "You let the gate open." Cassie screamed and fled again. Jordan had somehow ended up in the cafeteria. It looked untouched, tables still set, chairs upright. The scent of cooked food lingered, but none of it made sense. Then he noticed the people sitting at the tables. Every one of them was still, unmoving, and their faces had been erased, smooth skin where eyes, mouths, and noses should be. He stumbled back, and one of the people slowly turned toward him. No face, no expression, but it stood. Then another stood. They began to walk toward him. He backed into the kitchen, through the swinging doors, and slipped on something wet. The floor was soaked in red. The sinks dripped thick, dark liquid, not water. And over the speaker system, the same robotic voice returned. Subject breach. Gate compromised. Ward 9 failure. Emergency lockdown in effect. He bolted. Trevor had reached the Central Records Office. It was the heart of the hospital, where everything would have been documented if anyone had been brave enough to record it. The drawers were locked, so he kicked one open. Files inside were stamped, unredacted in bold ink. But some were untouched. He pulled one, opened it. It read, Project Caligo's classification. Black level compartmentalization. Objective, extraction and isolation of persistent human consciousness post-mortem. Process. Subjects with heightened psychic sensitivity introduced to death states under observation. Result. Persistence of fragmented awareness, localized haunting phenomena. Status. Containment failed. Ward 9 sealed. Do not reopen. Trevor whispered, They were trying to trap souls, study them, use them. Footsteps echoed outside the door, slow, heavy. He grabbed the file and ran. Meanwhile, Miles had made it back to the West Wing. The door to Ward 9 was open again. He stepped inside. This time, it wasn't a room. It was a memory. The hallway stretched on forever. And standing in the center, his sister. She was 11 again, but her eyes were vacant. I waited, she said. You never came. I didn't know, Miles whispered. They told me you were gone. I didn't know they kept you here. I didn't know they hurt you. They didn't just hurt me, she said. They tore me open, broke my mind into pieces, and made me watch while they tested it. Tears rolled down his cheeks. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. She stepped closer. They told me if I let them use me, I could see you again, just once. He reached for her hand, and she began to fade. Her voice came from everywhere now. But they lied. The walls shattered like glass. Somehow, the group found one another again, in a long, dim hallway that hadn't existed on any floor plan. Maddie, Cassie, Jordan, and Trevor. Except Miles. Where is he? Cassie asked. Trevor shook his head. I think he went too deep. I don't think he's coming back. Maddie said, We have to destroy it. This place, the source, the core. That's the only way to break the gate. Jordan was shaking. We don't even know where the core is. Maddie looked up. I do. Her voice had changed. She wasn't just Maddie anymore. She had been touched by the ward. She remembered things she shouldn't. There's a chamber, she said, beneath even the sublevels. They built it to hold the earliest experiments. It's where they first opened the rift. Trevor looked at the wall behind them. That door. A steel hatch, embedded in the concrete. No sign, no handle. But as they stepped toward it, it hissed and opened on its own. Inside, stairs descending into black. The core wasn't fire. It wasn't machines. It was a room, circular. Walls covered in chalk writing, runes, sigils. In the center, a pit. And suspended above it, half human, half shadow, was the surgeon, still wearing that same stitched mask, arms outstretched, like a puppet with invisible strings. The voice that came from its mouth was hundreds layered together. You broke the seal. You opened the old gate. Now all who see this place will carry it inside them. Trevor stepped forward. You did this. You turned suffering into fuel. Not fuel, the voice said. Truth. The soul is not a spark. It is a thread. Pull it, and everything unravels. Cassie screamed and threw a flare at the figure. The flames caught. The surgeon ignited, violently, writhing in midair. And the walls began to collapse. The pit roared to life. Wind, sound, screaming from below. The walls cracked. Light burst from every crevice. Trevor turned and grabbed Maddie's hand. Go! They ran. The facility imploded behind them. Stairwells twisted, Ceilings fell. The hospital was dying. Or maybe it was waking up for good. They reached the lobby, ran through the doors, out into the forest, and the building behind them vanished. No explosion, no smoke, just gone, like it had never existed. The forest was quiet again. No wind, no birds, just three survivors, Trevor, Maddie, and Cassie, stumbling back toward the road. Jordan hadn't made it. They never saw what took him. One moment, he was behind them. The next, gone. Swallowed by the collapsing hospital, like a mouth sealing shut. They didn't talk about it. Not then. Not when they reached the car and found it untouched, just as they'd left it. Not when they drove, shaking and silent, down the gravel path and back into civilization. The hospital had vanished behind them, like it never existed, like it had been swallowed by its own sins. 2 weeks later, Trevor sat alone in his apartment, staring at the footage on Maddie's hard drive. It was glitchy, distorted. Some clips were missing entirely. Others were there but warped, like the camera had captured something it wasn't meant to see. Faces twisted mid-frame, voices overlapped. Sometimes, the same scene repeated from an angle no one filmed. And worse, some of the footage kept changing. He'd play a clip, and it would be normal. He'd play it again, and there'd be a shadow in the corner. He tried deleting it. It reappeared. He tried formatting the drive. It reformatted itself. On his wall, he'd pinned the original notes from Ward 9, the Project Caligos file. He stared at one line over and over. Persistent human consciousness, post-mortem. He started hearing things at night. Footsteps in his hallway, whispers behind doors, voices saying his name. One morning, the file cabinet in his bedroom was open, even though he didn't own a file cabinet. Inside, a single photo of a girl in a hospital gown, eyes black. His lights flickered. He didn't sleep after that. Cassie tried to move on. She went back to her job, to her routines, science, logic, numbers. But every time she turned on her computer, her calendar would glitch. It showed appointments she never made. Things like patient check-in, 3 a.m., subject debrief, lab 7, termination protocol, Octave Ward 9. She thought it was a virus until she disconnected everything, and it still happened. She began seeing the girl, in glass reflections, on street corners, in her dreams. Cassie had always been the rational one, but now she started leaving food outside her door. Small bowls of milk, pieces of candy, like offerings, because somehow she knew she wasn't alone. And she didn't want to know what would happen if the girl got hungry. Maddie didn't go home. She disappeared for 6 months, and then, out of nowhere, her footage surfaced on a dark web forum for urban explorers. No upload credit, no metadata, just titled Decays 9, Surviving 01.mkv. The video was nearly 3 hours long. Most of it was corrupted, but somewhere in the middle, there was a 5-minute stretch where Maddie was recording herself in a motel bathroom mirror. She looked tired, sunken eyes, gaunt cheeks. "I think I brought something back," she whispered to the camera. "Something that's not me." She turned to show her reflection, and the reflection didn't move, just stared, then smiled. But Maddie hadn't. The file ended in static. No one could trace the IP address, and no one has seen her since. 1 year later, a new video appeared on the group's old YouTube channel. It auto-published itself. Trevor was the only one who still had access, and he swore he didn't upload anything. The video was titled, Reopening Ward 9. It was black and white, grainy. The thumbnail was a frame from their very first day at the hospital, the moment they stood outside the broken front doors. But the video was different. It didn't show them walking into the building. It showed them walking out. All 5 of them, even Jordan, even Miles, all smiling, all looking directly at the camera. And behind them, the hospital loomed, taller than before, newer, lit from within, alive. In the comments, there was only one post. "You're invited to return." It had over 200 likes. I know what you're thinking. You want to believe it's just a story, a made-up scare for midnight listeners. And maybe it is. Maybe Ward 9 is just a legend passed between forms, a collection of digital ghosts stitched together by curious minds. But here's the thing. Every so often, another post surfaces, a photograph of the same hospital from a new angle, a blurry screenshot from an old VHS tape, an unexplained scream buried deep in a podcast audio file, and always, the same 3 words written somewhere in the background. "We never left." So if you're ever wandering the woods and find a place not marked on any map, a place where the air feels too still, where the silence has a heartbeat, where your phone dies without warning, walk away, because some doors don't open for the living. They open to the living. And once you're inside, you don't get to leave alone. Concluding thoughts and outro. That was The Shadow Below, Ward 9, a tale that started as urban exploration and became something far darker. What makes it even more disturbing is how real some of it feels. The overlapping memories, the distortion of time and space, the question of what actually happens when a soul doesn't move on. Maybe it's metaphor, or maybe it's a warning. Either way, thank you for sticking with us through this chilling journey. Stories like this remind us that some places are forgotten for a reason, not because time erases them, but because memory refuses to. If you enjoyed tonight's descent into madness and mystery, be sure to check out the rest of our haunted archives here at Night Story HQ. We've got ghost ships, ancient curses, mysterious disappearances, and more doors you probably shouldn't open. And remember, the past doesn't stay buried. It waits. Till next time, stay curious, stay cautious, and keep the lights on.